Much of the talk around filtering and monitoring coming from government is around the prevent duty. That's statutory, it's important. Under the prevent duty guidance from 2015, schools are required to ensure children are safe from terrorist and extremist material when accessing the internet in schools, including by establishing appropriate levels of filtering. But we also know it's far more than that. When we're considering filtering and monitoring, first and foremost, it's about protecting children and young people from material or content that may pose a risk of harm. But don't forget, from a governance and leadership perspective, you need to consider the reputation of the school as well. That's really important. You can't have escaped reading in the media about staff and students accessing concerning sites and services from school computers. So whilst protection and safeguarding are the primary focus, the reputation of the school also needs to be considered. There are a wide and varied range of technical tools available for schools to use that can help with your overall safeguarding strategy. What you use would depend on your own particular circumstances. For example, a small infant school with just a few computers for curriculum and admin would likely need a very simple setup, probably just a baseline, which I'll mention in just a moment. Although tools such as those from NetSupport could be considered, which amongst other things will allow classroom teachers to view and control student screens, or even just whitelist specific websites that children can access. A school with potentially lots of different fixed and mobile devices or bring your own device strategy would need a much more integrated setup, giving further consideration to the range of tools available from NetSupport. Every school should have a baseline consisting of a broadband feed from a reputable provider, a firewall and an internet filter, and good antivirus software that would include anti-spam and malware protection. You would also include an email filter, and that's the absolute minimum, the baseline. And then your own particular circumstances and needs would build on this. In regards to filtering and monitoring, there are so many products out there now, and not all of them are tailored for educational settings. Recently there have been some developments in this area. The UK Safer Internet Centre has come up with a provider checklist for companies to self-certify their product. You can take a look at the link below and see if the self-certification from NetSupport. And this gives schools a level of assurance that the provider meets a minimum expectation. For example, that filtering can be differentiated by the age and needs of the pupils, and that the company are members of the Internet Watch Foundation and block access to illegal child abuse images and content known as the CAIC or CAKE list, and also integrate the police assessed list of unlawful terrorist content which is produced on behalf of the Home Office. Personally speaking, I'm not a huge fan of web filtering. I never have been, for a whole number of reasons, but it's a very subjective area with wide and varied opinions. But with that said, it is a necessary tool that does an important job. However, I am a big fan of monitoring and always have been, but this is another subjective area. Some people call it spying and an infringement on privacy rights. I disagree. There's a big difference between monitoring behaviour for the purposes of safeguarding and child protection and spying on activity. To give you a small example of some of the concerning activity I have personally found, a Year 8 student attempting to access incest sites. Had this school only had a web filter in place and the web filtering logs weren't checked, the school wouldn't have known about this. The issue wasn't that he was trying to access these sites and getting blocked by the filter, it was a child protection matter that needed investigating. I've also found a school email system which was being used by a small group of students for, well, let's just call it arranging some physical activities of a sexual nature. Again, if there was no monitor in place, then it's unlikely this behaviour would have been picked up on. An interesting one I found was where the monitor picked up on some inappropriate language. What was interesting is that the words weren't on the web or being typed onto a PC. They were song titles, and what I found was that a student was bringing in hundreds of music files on a pen drive and copying them to an area on the school network, where other students were then copying the music. So there was a copyright issue, and the fact these files were being stored and distributed on the school network, not to mention the amount of storage space that was being used up too. There are many more examples, and some far more serious than the ones that I've mentioned. But you can hopefully see the points I'm making, that a monitor can be a hugely useful tool. Now, this was years ago when I carried out the physical monitoring myself, but since then monitoring tools have come on enormously in terms of their functionality and usefulness. For example, the keyword and phrase monitoring features within NetSupport DNA can provide the school with alerts around activities such as self-harm or bullying, racism, radicalisation, and so much more. These keywords and phrases are in multiple languages, and as well as a pre-supplied database, schools can add their own words and phrases and set threshold levels. There's a word cloud feature which can be used as a quick view for trending items that may give indications of behaviour that needs intervention. For example, you can click on these words and see which students have been using them. This may give an indication where you weren't previously aware of a vulnerable student, or may give evidence of a potential vulnerability. I particularly like the automated reporting features, where you can set thresholds of what is reported and to whom, but also from a different reporting angle, where students themselves can make reports to named members of staff to report any concerns if they don't want to speak to somebody face to face, or even take screenshots and report concerning activity or content. There are so many useful features, and I don't want to go into them all, but whether you're a head teacher, a network manager, an outsourced IT support provider, or a designated safeguarding lead, what's important is that you know what tools are available to you, not from a technical perspective, but in terms of functionality. That all the tools are working together and that everybody has an understanding of the capabilities. Granted, introducing a monitoring solution and other technical tools can seem quite labour intensive at first. They do need a degree of coordination and management. It's about managing expectations. And if you put into place the strategies that I've previously talked about in other articles and videos, such as an eSafety group, then all of this becomes so much easier and can become a significantly positive safeguarding strategy. On a final note, remember that keeping children safe in education requires that all members of staff are updated regularly. Tools such as those from NetSupport can be really useful here. For example, if any trends or concerns have been identified, then this is an opportunity to relay to other members of staff, such as in morning briefing. Maybe there was an incident of online self-harm, for example, and a few members of staff mentioned they don't know what this is. Well, there's a knowledge gap and therefore a training opportunity just to raise the level of awareness. It's about everybody working together.